Glenn Clark and his standard of representation are fabled throughout the Barbados Labour Party. He is certainly iconic when it comes to representation. I mean, I'm not afraid to say that I ran into a young man who's now living in my constituency and still registered here in St. George North. And I said to him, so you're living here now, so you don't want to change and vote in something like the South Central? He said, oh, I got to vote for Glenn Clark. And it is that level of commitment that typifies the representation that Glenn has offered here in St. George North. And it's something that I admire and to which I aspire, so I'm happy to be here. I am, in fact, a daughter of Flat Rock. I spent many, many happy weekends running around in my grandmother's front yard. And I remember going to visit her, taking a bus. When you walk into the bus terminal and you see that there is a Flat Rock bus, it was really a relief and a pleasure, because I'll tell you that at that time they were few and far between. And I would say that I hope that has improved, but when I look at the standard of the transport sector in Barbados, we can't hope that that has improved, because in fact it has probably worsened. The delivery of services to the people of Barbados is something that has slipped tremendously over the last 9 years, and it's something that with your help and going forward to the next election that we have to resolve to improve, along with several other of the services and the standards that Barbados has come to know, but sadly are now coming to be a distant memory. So I am a daughter of Flat Rock and St. George's home, but I also want to take this opportunity to recognize the other side of my roots represented in the audience tonight. My mother is here, and she again is one of the driving forces behind the fact that I am here before you now. Because, as Glenn was referring to earlier, we know that the opportunity for education is something that was afforded to all. Education has always served in Barbados as the ladder by which those of us who are not born of means can advance. And this woman sitting before you took that very seriously and caused us to take that very seriously. And so I am grateful not just to my Flat Rock roots, but to my Hinders Gap, Howells Cross Road roots, and my mother. So I want to say this evening that I have been asked, in talking to you, to address some of the economic and social issues that are facing this country today. And in doing so, what I want to be able to do quite clearly is to make the link between the two. Because too often, what we do is we separate the economic and the social. We think that economic variables, debt and deficit and all these things are something to be dealt with by the big men in suits, and that the social is the softer side. But what I really want to say is that there is no distinction to be made between the two, because the way we treat the economic policy determines the social outcomes that we get. We are not in the business of economic policy just to balance the budget. What does it mean to balance the budget? What is the fact that we have a debt to GDP ratio well over 145% by now, third most indebted country in the world? What does that mean for people every day? And it is sad to me that the government that we currently have seem not to be able to make these connections in their minds. Now, I want to start this evening by looking at what I would call some of the economic fallacies that have been able to take hold of late. And fallacy is really just a fancy word for something else, which is something that is not true. there have been a lot of notions that current government has allowed to persist, and it's really for the sole purpose of making the Barbadian people believe that everything is okay, that it's not so bad. The first of those fallacies is the idea that we are where we are in this economic pit. And I say pit, but a pit has a bottom, and we can't be quite sure yet that we are at the bottom because we are still falling. But the notion that we are where we are because of a global economic recession. And you will have heard that. You keep hearing it from the Prime Minister, you keep hearing it from the Minister of Finance's idea that the global economic recession of 2007, 2008, somehow 10 years later, is still a cloud that is raining curiously only over Barbados. Right? And I will say that the Caribbean region did suffer long and hard from the economic recession. But where we find ourselves today, comrades, is not because of a global economic recession. It is because of the mistake of that recession by the government. Now, somehow it seems as if when this government and the Prime Minister in particular should speak, he says nothing. And when it is time to act, he starts to speak. So we are a little bit delayed in the response. Because certainly now that it's time to act and act quickly to arrest these issues, we just hear some rhetoric. We just hear talk about how this is a recession that has hit Barbados hard and there's nothing we can do. And I want to put it to the people of Barbados that there is quite a bit we could have done. But furthermore, there is a lot that the Barbados Labour Party, when it comes to government after the next election, will be able to do. Now, I don't want to give the impression that this is going to be an easy road. And as I walk around St. Michael's South Central, I say that to people that meet. Because what I do want us to understand is that we are going to have to draw on the solidarity in our communities. We're going to have to use our best brains or our best ingenuity to climb out of this crisis that's come about as a result of this government's mismanagement. But we will be able to do it. Now, the other fallacy, the other lie that has been allowed to persist is the notion that the Barbados Labour Party, were it in government over the last 10 years, would not have been able to do any better. And furthermore, when we come to government, we will not be able to do any better. And I want to put that to rest, ladies and gentlemen, here tonight. Because I want to refer to the year 1994 and the fact that when this Barbados Labour Party came to government in 1994, in the thick of an economic downturn, where foreign reserves were at 13 million, where unemployment was at 26%. In short order, we were able to increase those foreign reserves from 13 million to $650 million. We were able to reduce the unemployment rate from 26% to 12%. So the Barbados Labour Party is accustomed to having to bail out the democratic electorate. We're accustomed to it. We know how to do it. We do it well. It's unfortunate that we always have to do it, but we know how to do it. So this idea that things are so bad that no one will have the answer is a fallacy. It is not true. And it is used by the other side to give the impression that there's no difference between the DLP and the DLP. When we can see that the difference is clear. The difference in the first place has to do with, I always say that everybody everybody has a purpose, right? We're all here for a reason. But some of us, and more specifically some of these gentlemen on the other side, are really involved in business that they have no, in activities that they have no business in. Because I saw that Jepcha Inc. said recently that notwithstanding the economic downgrades, Barbados can still borrow. And I feel, you know, I don't say this to be unkind, but you can see when somebody is out of their depth. And I have to feel a little sorry. Because surely, if I were so far out of my depth, I would want to look around and see which of my colleagues could help me. But alas, there's no one to point out that when you have a downgrade, when you are at the status that Barbados is not, in the company of countries like Venezuela and Mozambique, which have been failed states, which have failed to be able to maintain a basic level of security, of democracy, have failed to be able to feed its citizens. When you are classified in that category, tell me, how is it that anyone is going to have the confidence to want to lend you money? When you have a debt that is so high, that servicing that debt, paying on that debt annually, means that some of your basic social services cannot be delivered. Who is going to lend you money? And similarly, I saw that the Minister of Finance also said that notwithstanding the economic decline that Barbados continues to suffer, that investors still want to invest in Barbados. Foreign investors still want to invest in Barbados. Now, I believe that foreign investors still want to invest in Barbados. I believe that there are people out there who see the Barbados that we see, who see the Barbados of 10 years ago and before, that has so much to offer in the way of education, in the way of healthcare, in the way of environment. I believe that there are people out there who still want to invest, but they're not going to do it under this current government. And that is what we have to understand. The reason that the foreign reserves are as low as they are is that nobody believes that this current administration can get its act together in such a way that those investments would give returns. And so I started with the notion of these economic policies because I think it is important to address head-on the types of disingenuous narratives that are put out there. Now, you cannot educate a population in the way that Barbadians have been educated and then talk to them as if they are stupid. They just know better. And how do we know better? I have a young man in Bridget Hill, and I see him almost every week. And he's liming on the block. I know we use the word block as if it's a bad word. He's out there liming, and he's peaceful, and he doesn't say much. But one day, after we had spent some time talking, he said to the team, I want you to see where I live. And he took us to where he lives. When he walked up to the house, he pulled the door. He didn't lock the door. He said, well, it makes no sense locking because they're not going to hear the car, right? He pulled the door. There's no electricity. There's a single bulb with an exposed wire that looks like at any time it can start a fire. There's no running water. If you step too heavy on the floorboards, guaranteed you're going to go through. And where his bed is up against the side of the wall, the rain comes through. The boards are rotten right through, and he gets wet. He says sometimes that when it's raining, he will stay out late because he knows that if he were to go in and go to sleep, he would get wet. This is a young man in his 20s. who is not working, not because he doesn't want to work, but because he has been so left out of this system over the last 8 years that he has not had an opportunity. So while these guys sit down in their press conferences and talk about investor confidence and how people still want to invest in Barbados and spread all of these wrong ideas about what is happening, people like this young man are suffering. And he has a son. And we talk about the role of fathers, but he wants his son to come and visit him and stay with him, but he cannot. He cannot live in those conditions. And that is a direct result, there is no doubt in my mind, of the failed economic policies of this Democratic Party administration. I have young men in Carnegie Village who came of age to work under this current administration and have never thought, they're so far away from their imagination is the idea of working that they have stopped even daring to try. I spoke to a young man. I was canvassing one day and he called me over and he said, I was working a little job there, but they sent me home. I said, why they send me home? He said, well, business is slow for them and they can't afford to pay me anymore. I said, okay. I said, so what is it you want to do? He said, well, I will drive, I will be a messenger, anything like that. I thought, he's in his 20s, and I thought, that's okay. It is okay for you to want to drive or be a messenger. But I wanted to hear where his imagination would take him, because I know where my imagination took me. I know where opportunity combined with imagination, and my mother telling me that I could be anything, I know where that took me. So I asked him if there is anything that you could do, what would you? He looked down at me, well, I'm not as tall as I used to be. He looked down at me that, I don't know, I never really thought about it. And that may seem like a simple thing, but I was horrified. Because as long as I could, as I say, as long as I know myself, I was thinking about what I could be, what I could do. And the fact that young people in Barbados now no longer even dare to hope, ladies and gentlemen, we should be horrified about that. We should be afraid, because what happens when people stop hoping? And so there are social issues that affect our economy, because all of those young men that have stopped hoping, what are they doing? We measure the unemployment rate in terms of people who are actively seeking work. But how long are you going to actively seek work when it looks like it's never going to happen for you? So the fact that these young people, and young women as well, who are often in a different position because they are primary caretakers of children, and so they will find a hustle. But it's young men and young women. And so what is the economic result of that? It is that if you have an entire sector of your society that has withdrawn because they have lost hope, where is your productivity? Where is your competitiveness? Where is your growth rate? These people are not economically active. They're not economically productive. They are opting out because the system does not work for them. And that is something that we have to fix in this country. We have another group of people who are on the margins of our economic productivity and of our society. When I walk through South Central, St. Michael South Central, I often meet people who will tell me, well, I don't know if I can vote. And I say, how long have you lived in Barbados? They'll say, 7 years, 8 years. I am a teacher. I've been a teacher for how many other years at some institution. But the particular problem that is facing them is that while they work hard every day and they pay their taxes, and everything that could be levied on their salary is levied on their salary, which now, as we all know, is more than we ever imagined could be taken, could be taxed on a salary. They pay their taxes. But because they have been trapped on this treadmill where they just keep being given a certain status of leave to remain in the country. They are not also afforded some of the rights that we have. Ladies and gentlemen, I know that this is a contentious issue. I'm not pretending it is not. But in St. Michael South Central, these people are parents of Barbadian children. They are the spouses of Barbadians. They are parts of our families. They are parts of our communities. And so when you say, how can you say to someone, I will use your labor to grow my economy. I will take your taxes to finance my programs. But if you walk out of here today and you trip and fall, you cannot get medical care. I want us to think about it. Because how do you say equally about a youngster in school who is not behaving well? Well, I wonder where his mother is. I wonder where his father is. These children have to be cared for by someone. You cannot compartmentalize a family such that some members of the family are valid human beings and others are invalid human beings. You can't do it because that family unit has to function together. And so here we have another group that is highly marginalized and that is not allowed to reach its full productivity in this country. I want to pause here for a second to acknowledge the presence of our chairman, Mr. George Payne, who's slipped in. So, in keeping with what Glenn has said earlier, I want us to recognize where the things that we do in the social sector, where the fact that we have gotten to the point in Barbados where Barbados does not work. The challenges that these people have in terms of having their status addressed, and it's not a question of numbers or policy. That's separate. That's a bigger issue that we will come to later. The fact is that you have said to people, we would like you to stay here. We want you to stay here. But we want you to come back every 3 or 4 or 5 months and pay large amounts of money so that we can tell you again that you can stay here. That is unconscionable. It is unfair. It is not right. That young man, Khalil, a 13-year-old, that attracted so much vitriol from the other side, he said something on the night of the march that stuck with me, and it is a simple idea. And he said, wrong is wrong. It does not matter for whom. Wrong is wrong. Because those resources, I'm not saying that the government is not to collect revenue. Of course, there are administration fees associated with processing certain things. But we know why the government is doing it that way. burden on people who can at least afford to pay it.
That's right.
So while you have a sandals, you are tax-free for eternity because that is in economic life. And it costs you less with the same provisions that you have not given to local business. Yet you want to say to a small business owner that in order to get back his or her VAT refund, he or she has to show to the government of Barbados that they do not have any outstanding taxes payable to the government. Okay. I may need my VAT refund to clear any amounts owing to the government. Or I may need my VAT refund to grow my business such that I can meet my obligations. Patients are honest people. Nobody is trying to run from it. But you cannot shoot people in the foot and then chase them down the road. Because they will not make it. It seems to me that among all of this talk about there being no difference between DLP and DLP, a clear one occurs, which is that the reason that in 1994, when we came to government, we were able to turn things around. We were able to use the increased foreign reserves and the increased growth rate and the reduced unemployment in order to expand the financial services sector and the transport sector and other sectors. The reason that we were able to do that is because the Barbados Labour Party is continuing something. It is on a development path. That started with first. And reason that, on the other hand, this current government has not been able to do it, is that they are busy with politics and have no time for development. They're busy asking you, when you come to look for the budget program, if you are DLP. I mean, this is a level of victimization that is unprecedented in Barbados. And while the Barbados Labour Party may hold some lashes, because we know that we have people who say, well, we don't help enough DLP people. But it is not about that. It is about understanding that representation is representation for all Barbadians. And we do not want to follow that model of victimization that these guys are following, because it will take us nowhere good fast. And the reason that we are all seeing these economic issues that we have, and some of the other social issues that we have, is that whenever there is corruption and poor governance at the highest level, you will see it throughout the society. I mean, we kind of pause and ponder and wonder what's happening. Why do people no longer seem to care about each other? Why do we have this increase in the crime rate? Why does the very fabric of society seem to be decaying? Well, I'll tell you why. It is because when I look at the minister and I see that anything goes in that ministry, that I do not have to adhere to any standards of transparency and accountability, and I can pretty much do as I like, and I don't have to account for where certain monies that were meant to pay for transport board buses that we never quite received, or sanitation trucks that we don't know where they are. If I see that, well, if I have to call in sick when I'm not really sick, I'm going to do it. And I want us to understand how poor governance at the highest levels in this country affect all of the issues that we see. Because if these big fellas do it. All of these sales of assets and drilling projects were delayed. But you know why they're delayed? Because delay and corruption go hand in hand. We keep being told that we are going to get our reserves back up because of what? Because of the sale of BTC, which is nowhere. And you know why? Because you must start as you need to finish. You must do things properly. You cannot structure a sale agreement where it is not clear where any cost overrun will fall, where any increase in the price of fuel will fall. Is it a consumer? Is it government? Well, I don't know if there's an increased price, there's a problem. If we can't pay and government short can pay, you cannot structure a sale agreement so that you put a 15-year moratorium on the establishment of any such company, which is a contravention of the law. If you do not do things properly, somebody's going to stop you and say, hey. The Hyatt, similar problem. So while the government of Barbados is now counting all these eggs before they're hatched and saying we're going to get 100 million from here, 100 million from there, with a Credit Suisse loan principal payment that's due in June. Not having a plan that's like you do not want to take country on. You're just kind of getting something put together and really hoping with your fingers crossed that nobody can tell that you don't know what you're doing. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I am sorry to report, but now we can all tell. The economic and the social cannot be separated. We also have another group of people in our society that we have not somehow been able to treat with effectively. And those are people who leave, who commit crimes, or who are convicted of crimes, and you know, these are uncomfortable things that sometimes we don't want to think about, we don't want to talk about. But people do not disappear just because we fail to put adequate policies in place. What happens instead is that they are marginalized and then they react. Because what happens if you cannot eat? What happens if you come out of prison and you tell yourself, all right, I don't our children having served their time, and we tell them you are of no value to me and my economy. I have no use for your productive capacity. What do they do? Now, I am not saying that we do not have to be tough on crime. We have to be tough. We have to be even tougher on some of the crime that we have been seeing. But when a man does his time, when a woman does her time, and comes out and needs an opportunity to take his or her life forward, it does not serve us to tell them there is no chance for you. It does not serve us. And if you don't want to do it out of the goodness of your heart, if you don't want to stop dilly-dallying on people's status application out of the goodness of your heart, if you don't want to help carve out a program along with the private sector and other community groups and the church and other entities for former offenders out of the goodness of your heart, do it because it affects your economy and it affects your society. Because you have now effectively removed entire groups of people from being able to participate in the growth of your country. And I will tell you something about some of these guys. They're some of the brightest people that you will meet. They're some of the most creative people that you will meet. There's some of the people who you go and tell them, I want you there for X or Y. Like the ones, some of the ones who did the song for the march. Step up. These are young people. I'm not saying these particular young people have been incarcerated, but these are young people who lie on the block and who may seem to some of us as if they're not engaged in society. But I will tell you something about those young people that wrote that tune for that march. We did not have to go and tell them what the issues were. Not a word. The issues with NAS, the issues with income tax returns that people can't get back, all of the issues that they itemized in that song, they know what is going on. And they have the talent and clarity of thought to be able to put it together in a way that will appeal to people. We have to build a new economy with those skills in mind. And we have to facilitate young people who have not followed the path that we thought they should follow. But somehow we have to get them back in. We have to get them back in. Because the alternative is that they reoffend. And we can say, well, look at he ain't come from the jail good yet. And he gone teaching somebody lines. And I'm not going to tell you that they're not hard-ears people. There's some people that are just playing hard-ears. It's true. But there's, at the same time, so many more people who just want to have an opportunity. You know, I've worked in development all my life, international development. And in the sector that looks at disaster and the reduction of disaster risks, so that when there's a hurricane or there's some other natural disaster, we talk about building back better. And I love that notion. Because I want us to see what is happening today. And I want us to look towards the next election when the Barbados Labour Party will be given the opportunity to come back to government. I want us to look at that as an opportunity to build this country back better. We are not going to be able to do it in the old ways that we have always done it. There are going to be some things that we're going to have to continue. We're going to have to see them through. But this is an opportunity to reconfigure this economy. This is an opportunity to look at the education sector not as a gift or a transfer, as we call it in economics, but as an investment from which you have to get returns. So you're investing not only in the people of Barbados, but you're creating a product that is so competitive that it can be exported. You know, when Barbadian students go overseas, I hear these stories all the time. Barbadian students go into a highly competitive academic program or a highly competitive work environment and are blazing, doing so much better than people from other regions and countries. There is something in that. We have to re-engineer not just the education model, because that is also a sector that marginalizes people, but we have to build it back in such a way that we can export education services. We have to build back the health sector, not just to serve better the needs of Barbadians and residents, the people who live in Barbados. But that we can look at medical tourism as an area of growth. We can look at building the kinds of apps that allow medical diagnosis across borders. We can build Barbados back better. And that is one of the fundamental differences between this Barbados Labour Party and the Democratic Labour Party. Because we always have a vision that is built on the legacy of Grantley Adams and Tom Adams and Sir Henry Ford and Bruce St. John. We always have a vision for the development path that Barbados should take. It is not a 5-year vision. It is not go there, how to get re-elected. That is not the vision of the Barbados Labour Party. It is how to continue the policies and practices that have stood Barbados in good stead and are going to take us over the next 50 years of nation building in this country. So I don't want us to be afraid of the challenges ahead. I'm not afraid at all, I'm excited. I'm so excited. I'm excited because I look around this room and I see people who are here to support this vision, to support Glenn, and to support the rest of us who are looking to take this vision forward under the party's leadership. I am excited because, and this is another fallacy that is out there, and don't let me tell you this foolishness. People say, oh, the DLP has been around for years and it's the same old thing. What's the difference? So if you get tired of telling them everything that Glenn and I have said and that you've been hearing all them and that you know, if you get tired of pointing out to them our record of development, I want you to also tell them that this Barbados Labour Party is renewed and revived and unified and ready. I want you to tell them, and I am so encouraged by the leadership of George Payne and of Mia Motley as leader. I am encouraged to be on the team of a woman who is not busy for anyone, anywhere, who is always willing to stop and hear feedback, who when she talks about leading this country, talks about having to bring everyone along with us. So when people tell you it's the same Barbados Labour Party, I want you to tell them something. That Mia Motley has never been Prime Minister before, but she is going to be Prime Minister. And you are going to see a leadership of the type that you have not seen before. You are going to see a leadership that these guys who are warming those seats right now could only dream of. So I am encouraged by that leadership. I'm standing here as a young person saying to fellow young people in Barbados who want to sit back and claim that there is no space for them. I want to tell them, come and take your space, because the leadership of the Barbados Labour Party has made space for you. It made space for me. It is a Barbados Labour Party that believes in the ideas and the drive and the contribution that everyone in Barbados has to make This business of sitting in a closed room, in big suits, drinking fancy water, that is not the Barbados Labour Party. That might be somebody else, but that's not the Barbados Labour Party. This idea that the Barbados Labour Party is not for poor people, look at the record. Look at the tensions you purchased at that commission. Look at the Commission on the Status of Women that look clearly at what poor women heads of households needed in this country in order to produce and be counted. So I want to say that I am encouraged as a young person by the leadership of the Barbados Labour Party. I'm excited to know that the next Prime Minister of Barbados has all the vision and all of the sense of inclusion that is necessary to govern this country in the way that it should be governed. So my last words to you this evening, comrades, are just to encourage you to help us get rid of these fallacies that are spreading. Because this next election is the difference. It is the difference for Barbados between soaring and falling deeper into a pit that we don't know how we would get over. This is not any ordinary election coming up. This is the tipping point for the next 50 years of this country's development. So I want you to be bold in dispelling some of these nonsense rumors that these guys hope to take hold to distract from the fact that they don't have a clue and they never do. I want you to help us get rid of those rumors. I want to help send a message to Barbados that the Barbados Labour Party is going to build this country back better because we are focused and we are ready.